we're back. We're live. 1 o'clock rock here on Monday. Whew. Another Monday here on Think Tech. This is Research in Manoa, which we do every Monday at 1 o'clock. And we have people, researchers, scientists come down from UH so we can find out what they're doing and get excited about how that affects our society and learn about, what's up there in Manoa, research in Manoa. So we have three researchers today. Going from my left, Brian Powell, professor, make that associate professor, Department of Oceanography, which is in SOEST.
That's correct.
SOEST, the School of Ocean Earth Science and Technology. And to his left, we have James Poterma. He's the manager of APDRC. I'm going to ask you to extend that acronym,
okay.
which is the data center at UH. What does it stand for?
It's the Asia Pacific Data Research Center.
Okay, is that the Lasner Research, rather Lasner Data Building?
No, this is more of a virtual collection of large data sets.
Oh, you mean, so, when you say virtual, it could be anywhere.
Well, we link into a lot of different computers that are spread around, yeah.
Spread around the world?
The world, that's right.
Okay, don't be so modest.
Okay.
Okay, and finally we have Dale Partridge. He's a postdoctoral researcher at UH Manoa. Welcome to the show, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you for being here. So this is an interesting, we're maintaining the operational physical ocean assimilation and forecasting models for the Pacific Islands, and it's important for our island society. So James, Dale, and Brian, they do their research, and they find out ways in which these models can be improved, as well as additional modeling projects with other groups at the university, and I suppose all over the world.
Correct.
So why don't you lead off, Brian, and tell us what this is all about?
Well, this is part of a NOAA-funded, federally funded project, and our collection is called the Pacific Islands Ocean Observing System, and we're one of 13 national regions that NOAA funds, and the goal is to provide a similar service to the ocean as what the National Weather Service does for the atmosphere. And of course, we're all very familiar at how important having weather prediction is and knowing what to expect from our weather in the next few days. Hawaii, we're very unique because we're the only ocean state within the United States. And so, of course, we all have a very deep and intimate connection with the ocean in and of itself. And so having a place where you can go to look at and understand what the ocean is doing today and what the prediction is for the next few days is an important resource for those citizens of Hawaii.
What? You mean surfing? What?
Surfing. So there is a surf report. There is
You're
a
not
surf
writing
forecast.
a surfing report, are you?
I'm not writing it, no, but there is a surf forecast, the wave. We have a number of buoys that monitor wave conditions. Those are put on the web. Oftentimes that data is reconstituted and used on the local news for that.
So are you the principal investigator of this project?
No, I'm one of a number of principal investigators. Jim is another one. And there are people who focus on actually taking data measurements around Hawaii. And so we have groups that are monitoring the wave conditions.
Ordinary citizens?
No, groups within PAC-IUs.
Scientists and researchers.
Scientists, right.
Postdocs.
Right. So one principal investigator, does the wave monitoring. Another principal investigator has a series of high-frequency radars that scan the surface of the ocean to tell us which way the water is moving.
We're going to talk about that. I can hardly wait. So how many people are in this project, this team?
Including people like Dale, who do the actual work. I would say probably on the order of 30 to 40.
Oh, this is major. And how did you get into it? I mean, is this something you started doing at a young age? I mean, did you wake up at the age of 8 and decide you wanted to do, was it the ocean assimilation?
If only, right? That would be a nice storybook tale for you. But no, it was much more mundane. In fact, I went to university, and this was at the University of Colorado, which of course
They
does
don't
not have an
oceans
ocean.
there.
However,
Try hard as they can.
However, there is a large national lab, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, and atmosphere and ocean are deeply entwined. And so there is a lot of oceanography going there. I never intended to do anything oceanography. And when I was there, I started to work for an oceanographer who actually is a UH alum, Professor Bill Emery. And from there, I sort of fell in love with working with the ocean. And I actually
You mentioned
started...
his name.
Yes.
You know, and I'm always looking for the one teacher or mentor who sort of vitalizes a scientist.
Mhm.
Isn't it true? Sometimes it's a combination of people, but I've found more often than not it's one person that sort of awakens you. Was he, Bill Emery, was he the guy?
One of, yeah.
Okay.
You know, one of the key ones.
Okay.
And so, you know, in some ways, I would say that one of my primary reasons for being a professor is that I had 3 or 4 people like Bill Emery and a couple others that really did, you know, influence the course of my life, and now I want to be in a similar role for others.
So what you're doing now, is this the main thrust of your career? In other words, I also have found that scientists reach a certain point and that's it. That's what they do. And it defines them. It defines their science. Are you in that part?
In a broad sense, yes. PAC-IUSE is one of a number of research efforts that I have going on. And so PAC-IUSE isn't the one and only, but it falls under my main focus of interest in the ocean, and that is how predictable is the ocean? How well can we understand the ocean and determine what will happen in the future? Mm. And in PAC-IUSE, we focus on the scale over the next few days. Other projects that I have, we look at, you know, climate variability with El Nino and the Southern Oscillation, which of course we're in a big El Nino phase right now. So looking back over hundreds of years and understanding what happened in terms of the El Nino cycle. As well as projects in Antarctica to understand ecosystems and predictability of ecosystems, and a number of other projects, but all under this umbrella of understanding essentially how much information is in the ocean and how can we predict from that.
You used an acronym PAC-IUSE. What is that?
That's the Pacific Islands Ocean Observing System.
Okay. Okay, let's go to you, Jim. Are you an ocean science person, or are you a computer science person?
I like to still call myself an ocean science person,
Okay.
but doing more data science these days, it seems to be everywhere. Yeah, like Brian, I was trained in physical oceanography, and I graduated here at the University of Hawaii. Roger Lucas was my professor, and at the time,
I know him.
he was heavily involved with ENSO research, and he had a bunch of at-sea cruises in the Western Pacific, and I thought, wow, that'd be pretty cool to do my career out in these tiny islands, and then got more involved in climate studies. And with climate studies, it's just a huge amount of data, and I realized that I was organizing all this data. Individual scientists were organizing their own data, and there seemed like there ought to be a better way if we could federate all this into a system that people could buy into, and that's where I am now, is managing large data centers.
You're not out there programming. It's not programming. It's conceptual. It's stringing these virtual servers together and having them work for you. What is that like?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I were to say programming, then real programmers would come and slap me in the face. But I am at a computer and I'm writing code, and the idea is trying to stitch together to make it easy for people to get the models that these guys run to look at a plot or to get the data sets. So one of the examples from their ocean forecast is with search and rescue. So the Coast Guard, for example, is going to want a forecast of ocean currents over the next several days, and they're not going to call Brian and have him put it on a 9-track tape anymore. They're going to call my group and say, we need this in a binary way connected to our machines, and then we would facilitate that.
Okay, I want to talk to you more about it in the next segment. And Brian, what are you doing with these guys?
Dale.
I'm sorry.
So I'm a researcher working with Brian.
Dale.
Yes. Yeah. So I primarily help maintain the operational system, so making sure that keeps ticking over as well as sort of putting in some research into ways that we can improve the system, trying to get a handle on how good a job we're actually doing by looking back at past forecasts and comparing that against what actually happened.
So are you working with Brian or Jim or both?
Mostly with Brian, and pass on the data to Jim to put out there.
And you're reviewing the data that Jim is working.
The day-to-day things that come out. Yes.
Okay. And are you a sensor person?
No, I'm a mathematician by training.
Mathematician?
Yeah, I'm relatively
I
new
never
to
met
the whole.
a mathematician I didn't like.
I was glad to hear that.
Did you go to that mathematician conference they had at UH? It was computer science and math. It was the intersection of the two. It was a global conference only about a month ago.
Okay, I didn't hear about it. I must have missed that.
Math is really important, even for computer scientists, maybe especially. We're going to take a short break now, okay? By the way, before I go to that, Dale, what's your training up to this point?
Well, the last year I've been working in oceanography, but prior to that I finished my PhD a few years ago in mathematics applied to glacial science. And then I was working in a metrology lab looking at materials modeling for a year before moving out to Hawaii.
I'm sure he's a great resource for you.
He is. He is.
Okay, that's James and Dale and Brian, and we're talking about, let's see, ocean assimilation and forecasting models for the Pacific Islands. We'll be right back after the short break.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen, host of Likeable Science on Think Tech Hawaii. Come join us every Friday at 2 p.m. when I interview interesting scientists about what they do, why they do it, and why we should all care about it. It's a lot of fun to see. And you can learn interesting stuff. You'll hear all kinds of fascinating science, and we know you'll have a great time. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.
Aloha, you can join the Hawaii Farmer Series every Thursday from 4 to 5 on Think Tech.
And I'm your co-host Matthew Johnson, here with Justine Espiritu.
And we are so thankful to have this show to use as a forum to get to know all the movers and shakers in agriculture in Hawaii and hear kind of their background and history, as well as
their perspective on what they're doing and also the future for agriculture in Hawaii.
So join us every Thursday. You can tweet in your own comments and suggestions and be a part of the conversation at Think Tech High. And we hope to see you every single Thursday.
Okay, we're back. We're live with Brian Powell, Associate Professor, Department of Oceanography, James Poterma, Manager of the Data Center, APDRC, at the Hawaii Institute of Physics and Planetology, and postdoc researcher, Dale Partridge. So let's talk about how you spend your time, guys. Start with you, Brian. What is it like when you get up in the morning? I mean, what do you do to advance this science?
To advance this science. So, well, maybe what I should do is give a slight overview of what it is we're doing,
Please.
and then we can talk about how we're extending that. And so I mentioned earlier that what we do is we integrate the observations with the ocean model to make a forecast. And essentially, this is something we all do every day as humans, right? We think that our eyes are seeing everything that we look at, but our eyes and our brain can't process all of that. And so we have models inside our brain that have built up over our entire lifetime. So if somebody throws a ball at you, you're not watching the ball through its entire flight, right? You know that the ball is going to fly in a particular arc. And so you're making a prediction of where that ball is going to go. So you're taking observations, putting it in your model, catching it.
Wow,
right?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
So of course, this is why people, can see the same set of facts, but interpret them completely differently, right? We're tuning on a political orientation or what might.
That's why some people catch the ball and others don't.
True. Because we all have our own internal models, right? And so taking that idea and turning it into a mathematical formulation, we have mathematical models for the way that the ocean works. And we understand those quite well. Solving them is another problem, but we do that with computers. We can't solve it with pen and paper. But we can approximate a solution with a computer. And so much in the same way that our brain takes this sparse information and combines it with what we expect to have happen, to generate a forecast, then that's exactly what we do every day in the computer. So we take data from all around the world. We take data from satellites. There are a number of satellites orbiting the globe, measuring things like the sea surface height, sea surface temperature, the winds, the atmospheric pressure, a number of variables. And we take those data, and along with data that we're taking from under the water. So the bad thing about the satellites, right, is they can only see the surface of the ocean. And as we all should know, most of the interesting thing is underneath the surface of the ocean. And so we also have instruments that go down under the water. And now those, right, it would be very time consuming, very expensive, and very difficult for us to go out in ships constantly surveying all around the ocean. So instead we have robots do that for us. Two different types. One we just call sea gliders, and these are torpedo-shaped, tubes with wings on them.
That big?
No, size of the table.
Okay.
A little bigger. And they don't have a propeller or anything. All they do is they change their buoyancy, right? So if they make themselves more dense, they sink. They change the buoyancy.
And they
then
go with the flow.
Well, they do go somewhat with the flow, but they have those wings, and so as they sink, right, then their vertical motion, the wings just like in an airplane, the wings translate that into a horizontal motion, right? Airplane is different in that it has horizontal motion, and the wings translate it into vertical.
Yeah.
And so in here, we take that vertical motion and make it send us forward, and then there's a vertical stabilizer, right, for changing our direction. And so those go underwater. They survey, they measure the salt content, the temperature. They can also look at how much biology is in the water, and another number of other kind of instrument packs that can be put onto those. And they just dive down, then they go down about 1,000 meters underwater.
That's 3,000 feet. That's pretty deep.
Yeah, and then they come right back up, and they span probably, I would say, 4 to 5 miles when they go down and back up.
And that's all you need from them.
Well, but they're doing that continuously, and so a pilot, as we call it, would actually program in, I want you to dive here, surface here, then dive again and surface there, and we can program entire tracks.
Then you
for
can
to
meet
follow.
them when they surface. And that's when you get the data from them, when they surface?
Well, no, so actually it's interesting. Every time they surface, they connect to a satellite and send all of their information. We get it then back in real time. The pilot can then change their course if they so
sure,
desire.
because he's in touch with them, yeah.
Exactly.
Not when they're under, but
Not
when they're on
they're-
the surface.
right, so-
And you don't have to be there, The pilot doesn't have to be there. Nobody has to be there.
That's right. That's why
Cool.
they're great, right? So the downside is that sharks attack them and other things. The ocean is not a hospitable place, and so things do happen to them when they're underwater. The second type is a little simpler, but actually a very similar idea. It lacks the wings, but these are called Argo Floats, and these are deployed everywhere around the world. There are roughly 4,000 of them in the ocean today. And they
By
just,
various organizations and agencies.
various organizations, international, US, et cetera. And these sink down to 1,000 meters, similar, and they stay down for 10 days, just going wherever the ocean takes them. And then they come back up, they send all of their data back, and then repeat.
It's the
And
same
they just-
idea.
Yep, and
With
they
satellite communications and all that,
Exactly,
yeah.
yeah.
Let's hold on that and
Okay.
look at the movie now.
Okay.
The movie will be relevant to this discussion. We have a little movie. We love.
As well as the surface currents. Now it's moving kind of quickly. I gave you a movie that's kind of going fast. But you see the tides, changing the temperature as well as the diurnal heating and cooling of the sun. And so what that was showing us was what the temperature looks like around the islands and what the currents look like. So fishermen are most often interested in temperature fronts, right? Where the cold and hot water meet, fish like to aggregate there. And so fishermen like to look at forecasts and know, where do I go to look for fish today?
Oh, I see, yeah.
Currents are very important. In the earlier segment, Jim mentioned the U.S. Coast Guard, We work closely with the Coast Guard on their search and rescue operations, so we provide them with forecasts. They have their own computer system called the SAR-Ops, the Search and Rescue Operations. And what they can do is they can throw something in the water, right? And they give it characteristics. It's a person, it's a diver, they're wearing a wetsuit, so there's certain buoyancy. And then their computer simulation will take our currents and advect that particle wherever it'll go and try it in different ways to see what should our search area be.
So these models are ever evolving.
Yes.
The sensors are ever evolving. What you put in and get out. And the models must be around for a while. I mean, they started, I guess, a few years ago, and you find them and refine them and refine them.
Correct. Yep. So the models are under constant evolution.
Yeah.
New ways of solving things in a computer, and they get updated with that.
Okay.
And so that's what we do today. But what we're trying to do is to move into, rather than doing one forecast, doing many, many forecasts, and then saying, as with people, right? If we all guess how many jelly beans are in the jar, one of us is probably going to be terrible at picking. We're all going to be terrible, but then you take the average of all of us, and we're probably really close.
Maybe a weighted average.
Yeah. And so Dale is working on what we call ensemble forecasting. And
Ensemble forecast. Is it musical?
That would be nice. No, it's all computer based, I'm afraid. But yeah, so it's as Brian says, we take lots of different states of the current ocean to make our forecasts with. So this can end up going in sort of several different directions, and the idea being that the average of all of them will be better than just running a single one.
And that's true. I mean, that's an absolute. If you take an average, you're going to get a more accurate reading than if you just take one.
If you have enough things that you're going forward with.
But how do you get different readings of the same information? I mean, what are the different elements that go into the average?
Well, part of the problem is that the current condition that we're starting a model from is unknown. We have a prediction that we've made previously, but there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding that. There's going to be some differences here and there. So you've got kind of a band that you can deal with, that you can sort of shift your initial starting point and sort of see what changes that makes as it goes forward. So
where does the math come in?
The math comes in primarily with the way that you take all the different starting points. There's a load of different sort of techniques that you can use to.
You're writing
generate
formulae. You're writing algorithms. Then.
Most algorithms are reasonably well known to do these kind of things, and we can just use techniques from other fields and to try and apply them in this sense.
To get the elements straight, and then to make the average, and thus make a more accurate prediction. That's your
idea.
department
Yep.
over there. Okay.
One thing I should mention is I made it sound like we have all of these observations, and Dale said that the current ocean has uncertainty. All of these observations that we do collect maybe tell us about less than 1/10% of the ocean around Hawaii, right? Despite having those great things, the ocean is a big place, and so that's why there's this uncertainty, right? And that, okay, we know what the surface looks like, we know what a few points underneath look like, but everything else is uncertain.
Yeah.
So that's where.
Yeah. So what do you do about the uncertainty? You have algorithms to figure out the uncertainty too?
Yeah, I mean things like the the measurements we've taken from all the different devices. They have a sort of certain error prescribed with it. Other than that, through the model and seeing what's happened over a long period of time and comparing with what actually happened, just gives you an idea on the sort of the scale of variability that you get within the ocean and the models, and that gives us a handle.
So you can make predictions about things that you don't have direct information about.
Yeah.
By just extending the information you have, extending those algorithms in a smart way to other areas and other issues.
Yeah, and allowing for being wrong, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, this is all about science, right? Pushing the envelope. So, Jim, I'm very interested in what you do, and I'd like to just I want to ask you a question I've always wanted to ask.
Okay.
Somebody who handles big data. When you have a database like this,
Right.
how many fields?
How many fields?
How many fields?
In terms of variables or?
Yeah.
Well, as Brian.
500, 1,000, 10,000? What?
No, I would say that in terms of the number of variables, it's probably maybe 20 to 50.
That's all.
In terms of megabytes, we're up to maybe a couple hundred terabytes of output. So, Brian's model will give you 3 components of velocity. It will give you temperature, salinity, sea level. It's a finite set of variables, but these are given in a volume. So his model grid, so we were looking at the animation earlier.
That was yours. That animation involved your processing.
Uh,
Can we see the animation again? Yeah, so now, did your processing go into creating this animation?
So in this particular case, Brian could use our data center to create this animation if he wanted to. He likely did it straight from his computer just because it was easier. But if you can see every tiny square on that map is a point in his model where an equation's been solved to give you a forecast of a variable. And so there's something like 200 latitude points and let's say 400 longitude points and maybe 100 points in the vertical. And so at every one of those grid points would be a value that he's putting out in a forecast. So a user might come along and say, this is great, these are the surface temperatures. I'd rather look at salinity at 500 meters. And so they could come to our data center and they could, on a web form, they could prescribe that and they could get the results.
So same data, different query,
Exactly.
different results.
Exactly.
I'm really interested in this notion that there's only, 20 or 30 fields involved. So it sounds like, I don't know anything about big data. It sounds like you don't have to have a lot of fields, but you have to have a lot of data, a lot of records.
Right.
Right.
You want terabytes of records, but only a few fields is enough.
That's exactly right. And another perfect example is, and I think Bruce Howe from Ocean Engineering has been on the program talking about the cabled observatory.
Yeah.
So we have a site north of Oahu that's measuring sound continuously. And so we're producing over a terabyte every month. Now, if you wanted to go back and look at that and find a particular whale, you would have to scan through many terabytes of data to do that. And so what we try to do is have the servers do that for you in a quick way. And so that's sort of an example of what we call data mining in big data.
What language do you use to make that inquiry?
Most of the programming that we use is in something called Python, which is a relatively new, but it's a rapidly growing scripting type language.
Yeah. So you can write that.
Correct.
You can write that, and so you can change the query from question to question. From a scientist asks you to find this or that, find a whale, for example, you can do that.
Right, and we add to that with programming in what we call JavaScript. So it's more for a web-based. So actually, somebody doesn't have to call me. They can just go to our website, and they'll get a map, and they can draw out a boundary, and that'll produce what's called a jQuery or a Java query to the database. That will kick off a Python script that will extract data and make a plot and put it on the web.
So Brian, is this data available to you in your office? I mean, or do you have to go over to some other computer, some big processing facility, or what?
To run these models, we have a large computer system with hundreds of CPUs that generates them. It also has many terabytes of storage. We do store some of the data ourselves, but every day the data that we generate get passed to Jim, and he archives those data, makes products, as he was just mentioning, that are then served on the web for people to use, such as the Coast Guard or fishermen or many other people. We have a swim forecast for Waikiki, Alawai plume forecast, and things like this. And so he puts those products on. For me, I work directly with the raw data on our computer
You're
system.
that kind of guy.
Yeah.
I want to get right down to the bedrock of it.
Exactly. That's right.
True scientist. So how long does this processing take? I mean, if we have terabytes of records, even for a few fields, and you push a button, you want to make a query, how long does it take to get the answer?
It depends on the type of query and the way most of our data sets are laid out in a geospatial sense. So if you wanted a lat-long map, that would be very fast, almost instantaneous. If you start doing things vertically, it's a little bit more challenging for the computer because it's got to search one layer for a point and then the next layer and the next layer and so on. So most of the queries that we get are returned in less than a minute. We like things to be very
It's
fast.
perfect, because we're going to take a break for 1 minute, so people
I'll
can
get you some data.
evaluate just exactly what a minute is like. Right, we'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Reg Baker,
Always
and
waiting
I'm the
for my
host of
opening.
Business in
You
Hawaii.
really handed it to me.
There you go.
Business in Hawaii is a program that is positive stories about business in Hawaii. We're tired of hearing the negativity and why it's the wrong place to have a business. We talk about the positive reasons for having a business in Hawaii and how to be successful. We broadcast live every Thursday at 2 o'clock. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Hi, I'm Stan the Energy Man, Stan Osterman, and I'm here to tell you about my show on Friday, every Friday, on my lunch hour, 12 o'clock till 1 o'clock here on Think Tech Hawaii. We talk about everything energy and anything you ever wanted to know about energy. So we're full of energy, and we'll see you here every Friday at noon to 1. Aloha.
Everywhere you ever go.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're back, we're live. We're here with Brian Powell to my left, Associate Professor, Department of Oceanography at SOWEST, James Poterma, Manager of the Data Center, APDRC, at Hawaii Institute of Geophysics and Planetology, and to his left, Dale Partridge, postdoctoral researcher who works with them. We'll work together on this project of ocean assimilation and forecasting models, which is really perfect for SOWEST. It's perfect for Hawaii, ocean state. Okay, anyway, I'd like to dedicate a little time to exactly what the deliverables are. You've got these sensors from the satellite, you're reading all kinds of stuff at the surface of the ocean. You got those autonomous vehicles underneath the ocean, 2 different kinds. You're collaborating with other people who have sensors all around the world, and you're getting all this information, and you're processing it. At the end, what does it look like? Is it a little book? Is it an email? What
We
does it
have
say?
different mechanisms. One is what we call a web-based viewer. So it's simply a website that looks like a Google map, and you can do an overlay of temperature or waves. So if you're interested, let's say you're in the Friday night sailboat races that go off the Alawai, you come to our site today and get a prediction on the ocean currents.
Well, I guess people do, because they want to win the sailboat.
It's not competitive, but they do
okay,
want to
okay.
win.
Well, if you're Larry Ellison and you want to win your yacht thing, you'll probably look at this information.
Right. So that's just one. It's presenting the data through a web-based viewer. Another thing that we do is what we call integrated products. So Brian mentioned one earlier. This he does a forecast of the plume coming out the Alawai Canal. So not very often, but when we do have these extreme rainfall events and we get brown water discharge out the Alawai.
The plume you're talking about is a plume of brown water.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And Brian and Dale's model can forecast where that will go. In order to do that, they combine in situ nearshore sensors with their model forecast, and then that gets passed to our group, and we produce animations much like we watched earlier of just the Alawai, and then people can see where it goes. So they're not sort of clicking on a map and getting a result. Something's pre-generated for them.
Yeah. So that's the deliverable, though. It's a map on a computer.
Correct.
And it can be static or it can be moving.
Right.
And it can show you all these trajectories
Right.
of all this information.
And the big deliverable that we have is actually providing all of the output, all of the data that we collect, all the models that are going to run get released in real time, free of charge to anyone that wants it. And
It's a website. It's a website link, right?
it's a website, but it's a data service behind the scenes. So one of the nice things about that is, Brian mentioned, there's different regions around the country that are funded by NOAA to do this. So Southern California has one, and the scripts that we create could just as easily read data from their data servers as their own. And so, for example, a barge company that's doing trans-Pacific cruises could have one script that gets data from different regions as they're going along in a seamless way. And so one of the big deliverables then is just providing this digital output in a binary format that is consistent across the regions.
Okay, do you look at that internet site, that link? Do you look at it and try, sort of try to make something of it? Or is your work already done by then?
We do a little bit of both. So a few years ago, we tried to get individual groups to take our data and make products, and for different reasons that, I mean, some of them have been successful. I think there was one that's trying to remember, named Bombora, which was an app for your phone for surf forecasts, and so they would pull in our buoy data automatically, and we didn't have to do anything that. We just said, here's the buoy data. Your app can access it through.
Would the
a
app
query.
be a graphic representation or
Theirs was color-coded icons. So if you had a red at Waimea, that meant it was above a certain level. And,
cool?
and that
So
sort of
somebody
thing.
can actually make money using this public domain information.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
right.
that's great. And I suppose it would be very valuable for, as you suggested, for barges and steamships and yachts, for that matter, to find out what the sea is going to be like on a given day.
That's right.
And time. That's a money thing, and you can plan how much fuel you need.
Exactly right.
And do ships actually look at your website? Can they get it at sea?
They can, and we've interacted with some of the barge companies. I think most of our interest at this point has been more locally. So the canoe races, the Waikiki Rough Water Swim, the sailors that are going out recreationally. Surfing is the number one use, I would say.
Yeah.
I think the barge companies and some of the larger shipping companies subscribe to a service and they pay to get these things. But they could, if they have a satellite connection, they could get it.
These predictions are they like in a short time frame? In other words, you're predicting what's going to happen in the next, how long? Next 5 minutes? Next day? Next week? How far is the prediction period?
7 days, so the next week. So each day we gather all of the observations from the previous 3 days to give us what we think today is like, and then predict the next 7.
So it's a moving frame.
Every day, right.
Always. So
Right,
7
that happens
days
every
from
single
today.
day, yeah.
But only 3 days of data, or do you use information that you took a year ago as a sort of baseline of information that might be useful, might happen again?
Well, so we're taking what we estimated to be yesterday's state of the ocean, and we're updating that. And so, getting to your question, it's sort of building up over time.
So you never really forget anything. It's always in there somehow as a factor in prediction.
Yes.
That's pretty interesting. Well, I guess, I'd like to ask you, what's your career going to be like now that you've met these guys, been working with them on this very sophisticated project?
That's a very good question. If you'd have asked me 18 months ago, I wouldn't have even known I'd be in Hawaii. So who knows what the future will hold, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing and hope to keep doing it for a while yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, is this, you think, I asked Brian before whether, he had reached the nub of his career. Have you decided that this is where you want your career to go in science?
Well, I wouldn't say 100% definitely, but it's definitely at the top of my list at the moment.
Yeah, good. Okay. And Brian, I want to ask you, where is all this going? You were talking about the models evolving.
Yes.
Where are they evolving to? And to make them more useful, not only for the surfers and the ships at sea, but in general. I mean, are they going to be connected in some way with an evaluation of changes in the Earth, changes in climate change, changes in water temperature that we can foresee as the Earth goes through its decline?
Well, let's see. The way they're evolving right now is toward an entire ecosystem model, so that we have the biology and the physics and the geochemistry all together, so we could actually predict where, schools of fish would be most
fish,
likely to be,
course,
or how corals are going to respond, and things like this. So ecosystem modeling is where this is evolving to. In terms of a climate change, right? Many people work on that. One of the issues, despite all the computing power we have, to do long-term forecasts, you have to use models that are far more coarse than what we use here. So in other words, we showed that animation with all the vectors around Hawaii. In a climate model, that entire map would just be one data point, right? Just because of the computational requirements.
And the time frame we're talking.
Exactly, to run it for hundreds of years. But as computers and numerics evolve, then the resolution, to start making, rather than 1 point for Hawaii, make it be, 8 or 9 points for Hawaii. Then that's another evolution that's going on.
Yeah, and then you connect with other people, and then you get more data, and am I right about this? That your evolution and their evolution out there, your collaborators in other places, countries, universities, it's all part of the same ball game.
Yes.
And so the science captures it all, and as the science evolves, it evolves with the benefit of all of it. I mean,
Correct.
maybe it's an overstatement, but something along those lines. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. So, people are working on different facets of these global problems, and we all learn from each other and improve what we're doing.
Okay, my last and favorite question. Why do I, as an ordinary human being walking down Bishop Street, care about what you do?
Well, as I said before, that Hawaii is the only ocean state. We depend upon the ocean for everything in our lives. Though we may not think of it on a daily basis, we do think about it weekly at least. And just as knowing what the weather is going to be in a couple of days, the ocean is dictating what the weather is going to be in a couple of days. So we need to know what the ocean is doing. And then on an even more local scale, for surfing, you want to know what the conditions are going to be. If you're going to just go swimming, once you've been here in Hawaii long enough, you become pretty attuned to slight changes in the water temperature, right? We get spoiled, right? Sometimes we say, it's too cold, I'm not going to get it.
I can see a water temperature meter in the lobby of the hotel.
Yeah.
Defining how
Right. For the tourists, I don't think they care. Right? It's warmer than wherever they're coming from. But for us, we're a little more attuned.
Precise,
to that.
yeah. So, Jim, one other last point. We follow technology here. It's our middle name.
That's right.
And we know that computers change every day. I just read all that stuff from MIT. There's something going on every day. So they got to be changing around you, and they will be changing probably at an accelerated rate in terms of power and speed and capability, reliability, all those things. How does this affect the way you see this whole kind of project going forward? Hold on to your data, keep it safe, because the computers are going to change, right?
Right. I think one of the biggest issues now is that sort of what people call data now is almost anything. I have one of these Fitbit things,
So
right?
do I.
And so now this is on the cloud, and this is data, and this can be tracked and stored and analyzed. And so it used to be we didn't have the luxury of all this storage, and then all of a sudden storage capabilities became very cheap, and we used to buy a megabyte disk that came in a metal cabinet for $10,000, and now you can get it the size of a dime for 50 cents. So on Brian and Dale's side, really it's the CPU, or the speed at which the computer can make a calculation is incredibly important. On the data side, it's the cost of storage and it's the cost of bandwidth. And so bandwidth, I think, is the other breakthrough that we're really waiting for, because we try to serve not only the state of Hawaii, but all the American affiliated territories. And you go places like American Samoa or Marshall Islands, and almost everybody has a cell phone, but the internet connectivity is not quite there. So eventually we'll be sending things out to cell phones, and they'll be getting these alerts and high water alerts, maybe not tsunamis, but flooding events, that sort of thing. And it's all tied with the speed at which data can be ingested, analyzed, and then transported out.
I see you guys at SOWEST and HIGP, I see you as like wrapping your arms around the world and understanding Mother Nature better than we ever did before, and trying to find a way to live with it better than we ever did before. It's wonderful to be in that. Wonderful to have you here.
Well, thank you for having us.
Brian.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
And Dale. Appreciate it. Aloha.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Thank you.